Woohoo! We get to do the AMA. All right, so I guess I'm just gonna be basically breaking things down. All right. Just gonna go over the questions. I just watched this literally live, so initial reactions are a go right meow.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to an awesome stream. I am super excited because we're going to be doing one of my favorite things ever, which is an AMA. And I am joined by 4 of our absolute glorious content creators within the Ashes of Creation community, many of whom you have probably seen before if you are regulars in the community watching all things that are Ashes of Creation content. And let's just do some introductions because I'm excited to get into this. Obviously, we have, as I said, our 4 glorious content creators. Vladis, welcome, Vladis.
Oh my God, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much, Steven.
You can just see all the excitement and
I
the
love
pleasure
your
on
hat,
all
by
their
the way.
faces. I love it. Make the memos great
Yes,
again.
I love it. And that's merch, actually. Don't you sell that?
Yes, I do.
That is
definitely
super
inspired by early Intrepid for sure.
We got some weird looks when we had that in Seattle one year, let me tell you. But it was a great conversation starter.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
And then
He's
we
wearing
also
their
have
like
our glorious
merch.
Jamie Chaos. Jamie Chaos, how's it going, buddy?
Not bad. I'm actually really happy to be doing this on your end instead of being surprised that it's happening on my end. So I'm super pumped to be here and doing it this way.
You mean you're not crashing the live stream like I did you one time? That was a lot of fun, actually. For those of you guys who don't know, I was watching one Sunday Jamie Chaos's stream, and they were talking about an interesting subject, and I just jumped in. I was like, you know what? I want to join. Let me come on the show. And it was an impromptu, and I got to say, you handled it really well. Like,
thanks. I ended up cutting like 10 minutes of footage on the YouTube version of that, so no one saw me fumbling trying to get you on.
Well, you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
How do we do the Discords?
And then we also have one of my favorites from Loreforge, Sunny. How you doing, buddy?
I'm just so excited to be here. This is gonna be a riot. I've got the other 2 guys under my desk. They're yelling questions at me, so it's just me on the camera, but they're here in spirit.
I gotta tell you guys
down there?
at Loreforge, it is definitely a highlight of mine when you guys come out with some lore videos. One, because obviously, you're giving these lore videos as you're peeking through the keyhole, so to speak, and it's always so interesting to kind of hear the takes that you guys put it. And one other thing is, like, the quality is just so good for what you guys are doing, and I share it throughout the office. Our narrative team, our lore team, they watch it, they love it anytime there's a new video. So kudos to you guys. You do a great job with that.
Well, thank you so much. I think that those guys are not ever going to forget that you just said that. But we've been doing it for a long time and just gradually got better gear. So if you would have seen us 10 years ago, we might not have been having this conversation.
You're expensive.
Great job.
Thank
and
you.
then last but of course not least, we have Nice Gaming. Nice, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you? Really, really happy to be here.
You know what, Nice, I got to tell you, your name is so appropriate because always whenever I'm watching your either recaps or your theory crafting videos, you are just generally always freaking nice. You have this huge smile. It's an inviting presence, and it's a positive thing that I think is a great testament to the content creation of this community. You do such a great job on that.
Really appreciate that.
All these content creators are really good.
Well, I know that you guys have been getting together
watched
some
or followed them.
from the community. Some of you guys had little interactions with the community to kind of vote for questions, I think, along the way. And you guys obviously have your own questions.
We're also doing a bunch of community questions and Jamie's.
I love a conversation.
Discord, and I was
too, so I don't mind that. But
bumping things around.
Wherever you guys want to take
one of those questions may be in here.
I'm open to chat.
All right. Well, I would love to talk aliens with you, Steven. Seriously.
Oh my gosh, can we talk aliens?
Oh my God, I would love to talk aliens.
Let's talk aliens.
Just to give you away from Ashes, but again, this would be Ashes questions. But okay, to preface, guilds, the backbone
Let's
of the
go.
entire Ashes community, right? Alliances and so forth. You were a
Yes.
guild leader in Lineage.
There were a lot of
So
guild
guilds are a
questions.
very important feature in Ashes of Creation. So my first question is, can you give some examples of guild tools that are going to be in Ashes of Creation from a player data
Sure.
perspective?
Player data.
Yeah, I mean,
So player side, client side.
So little fun history. I started playing MMOs obviously when I was really young, 7 years old. I didn't have a guild then. That would probably have been concerning if I was in a guild as a 7-year-old, considering the content typically that exists within the guild.
My uncle
atmosphere.
invited me to his guild in EverQuest.
When I was 17 and
When I was
started
4.
playing Lineage 2, my first guild that I ever joined was called Darkness. I was a little bit of an edgelord back then.
We all are. We all are edgelords. Come on.
So I was in a guild called Darkness, and then I started my guild, which I ran for a number of years. I think almost 14 or 15 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
we had thousands of members across the world. And we would have really cool guild meetings. We would meet up in person. We had like a really intense guild DKP system where I had like engineers custom author an auction website that people had account services on in the
That
guild.
sounds like
and they
Steven.
would get like, DKP points and stuff. And I always hated having to kind of do that myself, right? I always wished that some of the tools that I wanted to use as a guild leader were not like native to the
Spreadsheets.
game system that I was involved in, especially if I was able to like slurp data from the game
data.
and inform decisions, whether it be participatory data, whether it be like kill counts for a war, or like just different things that I would use essentially to kind of gauge how are my members performing, right? And,
we would
how
have
can I
like
leverage
kill
administrative
counts on
tools to
Tibia.
message them either
remember that.
offline, like an SMS text
For
system,
like guild wars and stuff.
or the forum connectivity, or know what their kind of like play times might be if they want to share those with me, so that I can cater them to certain groups and constant parties and mix and match people. Like those types of layers of like tools are what I'm trying to achieve with Ashes, and having
Wow.
it be native to the game. And obviously, everyone here at the studio are gamers themselves. They're playing MMOs, many of which I've either have led guilds or been officers in guilds. And so that resonates with them as well. And I know on our UI side, Grat, who's our lead UI engineer, and Colby, who's our lead UI UX designer, they are both very in tune with delivering on that promise, which is to give native tools, at least at a bare minimum, above and beyond what other MMOs we've experienced give, as an out-of-the-box solution for guild leaders.
Okay, so on that note, basically, he's trying to give guild leaders, and from a player client side perspective, that they will have as much data on their guild members, on like kill counts, how they active, like their online time, so that it'll be like the best way to give data as like a DKP perspective in the player's hands, which is honestly something that actually hasn't been done before in the MMO world. So if that's one way to, bring new life into MMOs that like really, really expresses the community, and when you really, really need the community inside Ashes of Creation, it just makes everybody's life easier. So like can't be mad at new systems. Just be aware that they're probably going to break at first, and during Alpha 2 we are going to be testing those limits and seeing what might break it. And even when it gets to launch, there still might be some problems. So just be wary, because it's a whole new system.
Can you give like a couple of examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of those is going to be able to kind of message guild members offline, either through integrating SMS text as an option if people want to subscribe to that feature, being connected to forums, so that people have an opportunity to kind of message board within the guild. I don't think anybody really uses forums, and then they can see they'd rather do Discord message of the day. They can see the forums through that window. Another thing that we want to do is provide data around player performance in events that the guild is participating in, or that guild wars might be participating in, giving knowledge about
wait, that's huge. They might actually have like a calendar that we can access and watch as like players to like, oh, our guild is planning this raid at 7 p.m. Central or whatever. That'd be a weird time, but maybe you're doing it at 7 p.m. Central and you're just raiding a dungeon and you're planning it out, and you'd be able to see that on your calendar on the UI. That'd be huge. That'd be actually really fucking huge, man.
Where they might have their properties located within the game, where they may have their freeholds located within the game, what members of families they might be participated in those types of informations is what I think is beneficial for us as guild leaders to kind of have insight to and cater the experience of the member in the guild to what their playtime and activity is.
I know a lot of the PI members are definitely guild leaders, so they definitely want to
All right,
make
so
sure that
I've
these
got some
systems are
system-heavy
well
questions. So this first one's going to be about the story arc system. We haven't really received much information on how it will accommodate players of varying levels or its level accessibility. Are the story arcs designed to engage players of all levels simultaneously, or a certain segment specifically tailored for high-end or end-game content?
My initial thoughts on this system from what they had explained previously before I had watched the stream was that you have your node type. In the area around the node, you have lower level content. And then the further you get out from the node, you get higher level content. Of course, there will be dungeons and other types of POIs that you interact with out in the world that are, you know, in that range distance of difficulty or whatever. But, you know, you may come across like a really dangerous world boss like Tumak roaming around the maps. But for the most part, it would be like relatively level progressive outside from the node. And as you get further and further outside, the higher and higher level the content becomes. And that content is dynamic and changes with certain story arcs or certain quests that you do like around your node in general. And the dungeons themselves would be at set specific levels, but as your node progresses, there may be like a portion of that dungeon that unlocks higher level tier content, instance bosses, or anything like that. That was my original thought on how the system works. So
it kind of depends on the story arc. We have story arcs that do both. We have story arcs that are catered towards high-end high-end level ranges that are very specific to the types of adventuring levels that we want players to participate in that story arc. And then we have some story arcs that have different sections which cater to a broader diversity of level ranges.
there you go.
And the way we kind of approach players participating in those more broader story arcs is that the activities of the lower level players feed up through the story arc. So what they're doing influences even what higher level players are able to do. And
Really?
you know, kind of meeting
I don't know
the
how that
certain
works.
quota of objectives that are necessary to progress the story arc requires participation down the line across the story arc.
That makes
features.
sense. Okay. What if you're a higher hold on.
So to answer your
What if you're a higher level player doing that lower level content? Like, say you're level 40 doing like level 10 content so that you could progress further throughout the dungeon. Is that not how that works? I don't know.
question, Shirley, we have both.
I imagine you
okay.
just wipe
Just
the
kinda
floor
depends
with
on
the
the
lower
story
level
arc.
content and you keep going.
All right, I guess I'll go next. With most dungeons and POIs being non-instanced, how large and intricate can we expect dungeons to be in order to accommodate many groups and PvX potential? For
Yeah.
example, how many players do you expect the Tower of Carfin to accommodate?
That's a great question. So let me break that up into two sections. First, it's important to note that while the vast majority of our playable areas are within the open world, there are some that are contained obviously within instances. Those
Right.
instances being either individual instances, party instances, or even in some certain cases, raid instances. With that being said, however, part of the dynamic that a PvX game wants to emphasize when it comes to open world dungeons and playable spaces is the natural friction that occurs when scarcity is a real thing. And scarcity means that not all hunting areas are going to be the same quality. They're going to be specific loot tables that are relevant to certain hunting areas. There's going to be certain spawn rates that is relative to experience values for those areas. And there's going to be different compositions of mobs that are relevant to the areas as well. And so because there are these kind of tiers of quality of hunting grounds, that creates a rarity value essentially to those locations, of which then there is a level of scarcity because there's limited space. So we are going to be creating spaces that are very large, to answer the first part of your questions, that will host many groups, right? And we're also going to have spaces that are relatively small and might only be able to cater to 1 or 2 groups. Second part of your question, as it relates to Carfin. Carfin is broken up as a hunting area into 2 primary sections. There is the tower itself, and then there is the wreckage of the city in which Carfin existed beneath. Now, the beneath section is the wreckage itself is generally catering towards groups of 3 to 5 players, right? So it's not so much a solo area, but it is an area where you might go with a few friends.
Okay.
But if you went with a full party, then maybe your kill rate needs to be really high, and there's a few sections that are in the wreckage area that could support that, but not the entire wreckage, right?
Okay.
So that's an important distinction to keep in mind. When thinking about the dungeon itself, the tower is intended for full parties.
Full parties. What does that mean? Like 8?
6 levels. There are 5 levels above the base level, so 6 total levels that are playable, and each of those levels will support anywhere from 3 to 4 groups, essentially. So it is a relatively large,
like 24,
vertical dungeon.
32.
We're expecting
players?
Groups to spend a lot of time in.
Because if you think of like a party distribution as being an 8 party,
and it's not intended that the groups go between levels, right? It's intended kind of like they find a level and they carve out a section of that level that they're going to be hunting in.
Okay.
And then another group's going to be near them, and maybe there's going to be some friction because they keep pulling mob from your section, and you're like, "Hey, what the hell, dude? Get the hell out of my section!" And they're like, "No, you're going to die now." You know, like I don't know, something might happen there.
I like that. The very King's Avatar-esque.
Very cool. Well, it looks like I'm going to go now. I am from Loreforged, so you know that I'm going to try to cram in.
Before we get to the lore question, so here, let me go back so I have the question on screen at least. Oh wait, this is it. Okay, so with most dungeons and POIs being non-instance, how large and intricate can we expect dungeons to be in order to accommodate mini groups and PvX potential? For example, how many players do you expect? So it seemed relatively common sense, his explanation. There will be some mobs that are in varying levels of scarcity, reward, XP bonus, and spawn rates. So there will be higher level locations or like higher value locations for players to gravitate towards. And if somebody's already there grinding, then it is potentially a player friction to fight over that spot or to just leave and, do your own thing. So when you're going through all these dungeons as, like, your parties, I don't know what he means by full party size. I don't know if it means a party of 4, party of 8, party of 20, party of 40. But for what it sounds like, the Tower of Carfin is going to be a massive dungeon. So, and a vertical dungeon at that. So that's pretty cool. And then there will be certain sections that are like better to grind than others. And then, you could also work your way up to the boss. And I imagine that like a lot of the Tower of Carfin quests and dungeon progression has to do a lot with like the kill quests. Hey, oh, thanks. The Golden Feather Tavern. I imagine that's Chibi since she was the one streaming. Thank you for the raid. I appreciate it. I am excited to be on your show next week, and you will be doing the live thing with Rive tonight, so I'll be watching that for sure. I'll be here in your chat. Oh, thank you for the follow, Faisal. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm pretty sure Chibi's already told all you guys. Oh gosh, all the follows are coming in. I'm pretty sure Chibi's probably already told you guys, but I'll be on our show next week, so I'm really excited for all that. Nuclear Tango, what's up? Thank you for coming, Oracle the White, and also Chibi for following. Basically, just going over the live view. I was in Chibi's chat watching it with you guys, but I'm just gonna go through and break down kind of like my initial thoughts on it live now. So we are going to just wow, I lost my train of thought. ADHD. So anyways, the dungeons and POIs being non-instance are mostly common sense to us in the way that he explained it. I don't think there's anything crazy about it, but it does sound like full parties are going to be something that I want to ask questions about. Like what does Intrepid consider a full don't worry about it, Chibi. I wonder what Steven and Intrepid think of as a full party per se, because I don't know, 4, 8, 20, 40, what does that mean? What does a full party mean? And then yeah, the dungeon itself seems like it's going to be an absolute massive dungeon, so I'm excited. Anyways,
actions that are in the wreckage area that could support that, but not the entire wreckage, right?
Okay.
So that's an important distinction to keep in mind when thinking about the dungeon itself. The tower is intended for full parties, and there are
I don't know what that means.
Levels. There are five levels above the base level, so 6 total levels that are playable, and each of those levels will support anywhere from 3 to 4 groups. Essentially, so it is a.
And we don't know what 3 to 4 groups mean. Is that like 8 party? Yeah, that's. I thought it was like a party of 8 people.
Expecting groups to spend a lot of time.
They said like 3 to 4 groups, so like 30 players inside of the Tower of Carfin.
The groups go between levels, right? It's intended kind of like they
and then they're each doing their own section.
Carve out a section of that level that they're going to be hunting in. Nice. And then another group's going to be near them, and maybe there's going to be some friction because they keep pulling mob from your section, and you're like, "Hey, what the hell, dude? Get the hell out of my section!" And they're like, "No, you're going to die now." You know, like I don't know, something might happen there.
That seems like a relatively good sized party.
Very cool. Well, it looks like I'm going to go now. I am from Loreforged, so you know that I'm going to try to cram in a few lore-based questions.
Oh,
I'm excited for the lore.
Here we go. All right. So by the time the portals reopen, the Tulnar have been down there for an awfully long time. So are they thriving or are they just surviving? How much civilization are the Tulnar building underground?
And Steven wasn't going to answer a bunch of lore questions, but I'm glad that we got stuff out of him. So
one thing I want to talk a little bit about with regards to the Tulnar culture is that they are not a super centralized nation. They're not a super centralized,
very nomadic in nature,
right?
It seems.
They're relatively tribe-like, city-state-like, even at some of the higher points.
City-state.
When it comes to their factions, right? And having spent a significant amount of time in a indiscriminate amount of time at this stage, you may learn more about that as you get into Vera.
Centuries at this point.
Having spent an amount of time in the Underrealms, those factions sometimes can be at odds with each other, right?
Which adds a lot of cool story.
You know, not all Tulnar are going to be friendly to the other divine races.
It seems like a lot like the Minotaur race
because of that.
Like they're not Tulnar,
so
but
there's still some rivalry between those groups. Now, when we talk about the, you know, what is the apex of like civilization that some of those tribes have accomplished, some of them have accomplished some pretty significant construction and development in the Underrealm. So much so where, you know, you have a metropolis-sized, you know, location.
So there may be a metropolis in the Underrealm?
So, you know, that's not something that's going to be present, obviously, at the
Leak
start
or
of
no?
Alpha 2, but it is an intended.
I'm pretty sure he said that before, that there would be
where you can see really
nodes in the Underrealm.
Tulnar, civilization and their culture.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's cool that he gave up a lot of that information, especially since people are just so thirsty for
on why
Tulnar.
there's a singular option for tank main players or healer main players.
We have a node in the Underrealm
selection screen. And how much customization will there be in the base kit and augment system to truly make these different play styles?
Well, let me make sure I understand the first part of the question. So you're saying, why is there a single option for healer and tank?
Yes.
I see.
And can we get the tank name changed?
Please, please.
I saw everybody in chat talking about the tank name change, saying that it would be like just much better to be like Guardian, Protector, anything other than just tank, because tank is not the general fantasy term. It's more of like an MMORPG gamer term, taken out of context. So yeah, that's the most crucial comment. Absolutely. It's just like, please change the name, please. Just anything else.
I think we did a poll on that in the community at some point a few years ago, didn't we? And I don't know how that poll turned out. Somebody should dig that up if you're watching.
It was not in the favor of tank. I can tell you that much, Steven.
Audience,
I can promise you that.
Poll somewhere in the Ashes Reddit. I'd be curious to see what the sentiment was there. But to answer your question, let's start with the second half of that question.
Oh man,
when it comes to diversity. I think that you're going to have a wide range of diversity that's afforded through the secondary archetype system. That is intended to really, flirt with the line of what a main role tank or main role healer is, and provide some more hybridized gameplay for those particular roles.
I don't remember.
That comes in a number of different forms. We've talked a little bit about, obviously in the past, how augments are intended to work with primary active abilities. And
this was a big question I had on their class system.
And the cleric role are only afforded 2 of the archetypes, that some of the most interesting, in my opinion, options of hybridization are going to come from those secondary choices with the tank and the healer. So you're going to get a broad diversity of gameplay options there. When it comes to the role specifically, and why we're servicing those 2 roles with just 2 base archetypes, those are really critical, unique roles on a per party basis, right? When we talk about party comp, generally it is a traditional wheel of MMORPG game design that, when talking about the trinity of gameplay roles, that you expect to have 1 tank and 1 primary healer in a party design, right? And we wanted to stay true to that, obviously. And those roles do have a significant impact on general gameplay loop when we're talking about moment-to-moment combat, right? Between the tank controlling the battlefield, being able to take hate off of other players, being able to maintain, aggro status with the predominant threat source. That is a role that we don't necessarily want to build in another archetype to kind of compete with. The cleric itself, however, is also integral. Now, that's not to say that we do not have some influences. The fighter has the ability to kind of off tank, especially depending on.
I'm gonna let him finish his take before I go off on a tangent.
We're talking about just from a base stat perspective. Like, con for a fighter is going to be high generally at a base value. Their ability to kind of absorb hits is going to be greater because of their suite of ability selections that they have available to them. So there are some other roles that do touch the line a bit in that divide of DPS to tank role. And on the healer side, the bard has some regenerative abilities that they can utilize. Now, when they choose then to spec as a secondary class option into cleric or tank, if you're a fighter or a bard, you're going to get much closer to those roles, right? And I think having an off tank is an interesting, gameplay option and necessary for certain encounter designs that we want to preserve space for. So the focus is really to kind of, stay true to what we expect from an MMO perspective with regards to those roles and group composition. We feel that the current class design achieves that, and we're going to allow players to flirt with what hybridization looks like for those roles through our secondary archetype options.
And just
okay, so that ending statement was really, really big for me. It sounds like the secondary archetype is going to have a lot of class diversity, which previously was a big concern for me. It's not totally said that it will just like completely change the class, but it is a very exclamation point for me. Like, ooh, he said something that I like, but we'll see eventually. It seems like their party composition and the way that you make party compositions is a way that they are trying to intend for certain encounters, for certain players to make and to change, which as a PvP player, I think is amazing. Like if I can figure out like who in my guild like squad is like, do I need to do double tank, double healer? Do I need to have like just the 8 archetypes and just that's a solid comp, like that's a well-rounded comp, or do I want to do like something different? Do I want to change the comp up to a little bit? Do I want like a certain composition to go into a different guild that has a specific amount? Like do they counter each other or whatever? It is a very interesting thing just bringing into like compositions when I think about like League of Legends in general. Yeah, balance is hard, and having 3 tank classes is hard to do, and not having one of the tank classes always be the go-to main tank. Tank DPS support 5 DPS, that's general comp they were built on. I agree. I absolutely agree. Bard being the support, healer being like the cleric, obviously, and then the tank being the tank. And then you have like the artillery mage who just does a lot of damage but takes a lot of time to do the cooldowns. You have ranger that's consistent DPS. You have fighter that does like off tanking / DPS. And then he's also talking about like how you have certain specs where you can say you go the more tanky route or you go the more off tank route or just straight DPS. So there's like build diversity within the archetypes. And so far, we've only seen really like this archetype does this thing. But what we have yet to see that he's alluding to is that there will be different build diversity paths that we can choose within those archetypes, even pre-25, even pre-secondary archetype. It's alluding to it. I haven't seen it yet. Optimistically, skeptic about it, but, I'm hoping. No, you're okay. I'm cautiously optimistic. Optimistically skeptic. One of you can use either of those interchangeably, but like the class system is probably the make or break for me. If I can make my primary archetype really fit, like if I can make my class really fit and feel like a different class in the 64 class system. I know the whole primary archetype thing is like your base archetype and you'll just augment it with your secondary archetype. I'm really hoping that there's more variability than what I'm assuming there is. But, at the end of the day, I had a lot of fun playing this in Alpha 1, so, maybe I'll continue to have fun in Alpha 2 and beyond, even if it's not my, final desire, my magnum opus of MMO class systems. But, it is a lot of dev work, a lot of animations, a lot of visual effects. Literally everything in the pipeline goes through all these classes. So it takes a lot of time, and I'm willing to wait if the class system is everything that I hope it to be. I'm willing to wait for it. But from what I've been researching and from what I've seen, it seems like it's really bare bones and it hasn't been fully thought out to the secondary archetype system, although Steven is alluding in this AMA that it is actually well thought out. So I am cautiously optimistic.
To clarify,
yeah,
because the fear for me,
clarify on my balance comment, it's a reference to tanking and like, wow, where druid or some other main tank options seldom get main tank roles because the warrior or paladin are meta. Absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the big problems with like WoW or like balance in general is that like MMOs don't have a consistent balance team to like look at the patches and the strength of their classes or their archetypes in Ashes of Creation's case. And I think if Intrepid and Ashes of Creation really wants to succeed, they need to have a balanced team. they need to be looking at like, oh, well, this class is overperforming or underperforming, and like look at that and like do like patch fixes. I think part of the reason why some of these systems seem so dog in MMOs are because the devs just don't do patch notes. They don't update patches. They don't do balance changes. They don't do any of this stuff. They're just like, well, this is your patch for the whole season. Good luck. We'll change it when, next season or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But yeah. I'll just listen to the next part here. Oh no, I have an ad. Why do I have ads enabled? There should be no ads. I'm sorry about that, guys.
That a lot of people have told me is they're afraid from 1 to 25
Hopefully you have
that
ad
you're
blocker
just
or
going to get
something.
one style of gameplay. Like for the cleric, you're just going to be a holy priest from WoW. So as in the base kit, is there going to be any way to play differently even from 1 to 25?
Yeah, and I think that what we're trying to achieve in the base kit offering for those two roles, and you may have seen this already with the cleric, class live streams that we've done. There are some offensive options there, right? And you could spec more offensively as.
Did he just say that there was offensive abilities in the cleric kit? I mean, yeah, there's the consecrating wave. There's like the stun lock thing with the stagger, the chains of resonance or whatever it is. There wasn't a ton of offensive stuff. I saw 19 ways to heal though. There's a lot of ways to heal. The Phoenix dash was pretty sick. I don't know if the cleric had that many offensive abilities, but I mean, I'm also not too worried about abilities doing damage, considering you have weapon skill trees. And I think weapon skill trees will actually be a good addition to Ashes of Creation, simply because weapon skill trees and like being able to skill your weapon and actually do damage with your base weapon is a meaningful thing. I don't want to overlook weapon combos and weapon trees as like a minor thing. That is a big thing. And if that is what they are, making their balance towards, then I'm totally down for that.
The cleric than you would necessarily into.
Bro, what is up with these
The
ads?
same is true on the tank side. Your ability to kind of, customize your build options. You're not pigeonholed into specifically that role. You have hybrid options just from a base kit perspective.
Piggybacking on the tank name thing, if we go Guardian, you can go Guardian, Juggernaut, and who doesn't want to be a Juggernaut?
He said Guardian, Juggernaut.
I can't remember what we were saying, but when Combat was working on the
instead
fighter,
of tank.
How often I heard in the playtesting somebody say, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch." Like, oh,
that's so funny. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention with the off tanking thing is like, yeah, some of these classes when they're doing their different build specs, like fighter is definitely like a drain tank with the exert ability and like the charge and the heroic leap. Like you're going in there, you are being the front line, especially when you're doing like PvP or you're drawing a lot of aggro with PvE. Like you are technically a frontliner in some regard. And even like the cleric may even have some tanking abilities where they'll be able to get aggro on mobs and start healing up. I do know that in Alpha 1, the healing aggro was absolutely insane. I'd put like healing over time on somebody and the mobs would aggro me. So like healing aggro is a real thing in Ashes of Creation. So that is something to look out for sure, is how much aggro you gain from just healing alone. So that is something to think about too. So
straight out of
that's
X-Men.
exact thought I had. All right. So from our understanding, the land management system in Ashes leads to environmental consequences due to overharvesting. With the elimination of the enemy of the state feature, what mechanisms are available for node citizens?
I didn't even know the enemy of the state feature was taken away.
Situations where a group of non-combatants intentionally depletes resources from an enemy node, given the significant downsides associated with becoming corrupt.
Yeah.
So this was actually one of the big questions that we had in Jamie's Discord. And the main concern here was if alts or other people from an enemy node that we haven't technically gone to war yet. Like there's some player friction happening. They're coming over, they're cutting all our trees, cutting all our rock nodes, or like materials and stuff like that. They're farming our fields, they're burning our crops, and you know, we don't want to go corrupt, you know, but like we're just wondering, like, is there a way to combat that other than just doing that? Like, and it's like the options are be corrupt or use their same strategy, and we didn't really know how to like really fight back on that. So that's what the main question was about. Obviously you could go corrupt, but then you have the potential of like stat dampening, and that's a way for them to combat you just by like they're using alts. They don't care if they get XP debt. They're just mining and hitting a tree, you know? They don't give a shit about any of that. Obviously it takes time away from their main, takes time away from them like gathering resources and stuff like that. So there is give and take, but essentially a win-win situation where they're getting corrupted and you're getting resources, unless, you know, they take the resources away from you after you die. But yeah, that's kind of like the main concern of this question.
I mean, there are options, right? You have if those individuals are part of a guild, you have guild war as an option, right?
Which they wouldn't be on alts.
If they are part of another node as a citizen, you have node war, which is an option.
It would be a longer term thing where you have to get a quest for.
Moments of player friction to circulate through the game's systems. And what you're describing is a moment of player friction where the resources local to your node or your guild, you know, location are being capitalized upon by people you don't know or don't want, and they're doing it in an aggressive manner to harm your ability to then interact with that environment after they leave.
Yes.
That is a reputation score. They are establishing a reputation score with you as another non-faction based player.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that that reputation score circulates through our game system, such as leveraging the potential for your guild now to be at hostility with them, right, is something we want to allow players to leverage. So there are answers in the guild war system, in the node war system, to respond to aggressive actions like land management abuse.
Right.
However, let's say the people doing the work are, you know, alts, and they are not in a guild, and they choose to be citizenless, right? The other thing that we want to keep in mind is that there are ways to improve land management scores. There are policies that you can take which improve that and counteract that. So, you know, it is not just a zero-sum proposition between somebody's griefing me and not. This now may direct the way that you choose to govern your node in response to those outside actors, right? This is, again, intended to engage the systems. So while you may not want to accrue the corruption debt dealing with these, you know, these alts or whatever, right? You now may need to manage your node differently in order to compensate, right? Unless it is meaningful enough to you to PK those people and you go and do that. That's also an option.
Yep.
So on the like management side, would there ever be a potential policy that allows you to kind of make an area, like say a forest, a purple area, or is that something that's not being considered?
I was really hoping for this.
It's something we have definitely spoken about in the past. There's advocates for it on the design team that are more bloodthirsty designers. However, generally I have guarded against that, at least as it stands for now. If we're talking like, you know, Ashes of Creation, you know, first expansion, you know, number 2 or whatever, and we want to introduce perhaps some of the mechanics of like, you know, policies that do what you just described, like designate a zone as open PvP, or if we
what if it's part of like a military node,
person non grata, you know, approach as well. Like that.
What if that's a military node policy? That would be sick, right? Like you are advocating towards your node policy and also feeding into what the players that went there for. Like, it doesn't have to be for every node, but if you make it a military node policy, that'd be pretty sick to like govern like your vassal node states as like certain purple zones in the area for like valuable resources. That way, like, your players don't accrue corruption in like the high material areas. I feel like that would be something to think about. It may not have to be for like economy or like scientific, but if you do it for military, even divine might be able to do it. Because like, what if you make like a holy war? You know, like that is sacred land. This is a purple zone. Like that'd be pretty sick. No, there are plenty of options and systems in place for PvP, but it is definitely a way for a wait and see how it plays out. Yeah, the thing is, I think players are more susceptible to grief and take advantage of this system before the node wars starts happening, before the guild wars start happening, or find a way to navigate around it. I don't think that they'll play fair with the system, and I don't think not having a way to combat that. He did say that there would be a way to combat it with land management policies and stuff like that, but I definitely think there should be options where more bloodthirsty players have options. And I don't think, like, I might be a little controversial here, but I don't think players tend to do the PvP route if there are consequences. I think people are going to be less likely to do the PvP in Ashes of Creation simply because of how many consequences there are and what that could entail and whatnot. So I do think people will err on the safer side and the nicer side. But, you know, there are some bad actors and stuff. When there are consequences involved in Tibia, I rarely, like, I don't know if anybody's played Tibia. I played so much Tibia. I allude to it so much. Yeah, it's good. That's good. That's a good thing. I played Tibia so much where I would be walking through town as like a level 16 player and there's like a level 80 just walking around and I'm like, oh god, is he gonna kill me? He could definitely kill me, but he never does. Why? One, because he doesn't need to. Like, my gear sucks, right? Two, because if he does, there's a level 150 that might come after him. There might be the whole town that comes after him. You know, like there is a social aspect to PvPing and PvXing that I think a lot of people have forgotten about just because of WoW griefers, where they just walk into a level 20 area and kill you with, like, you don't lose any of your stuff, but man, it's fucking annoying, right? Like, it's really annoying. But on the real side of this is like, player friction is definitely stopped by other player friction. And if you don't give a way for them to fight and make the corruption system around your node area of influence, maybe it deters even from protecting your node. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe the corruption system is just a balance thing and you just need to work with the corruption balance, and maybe that's the only answer you need. I think it's because we don't know how much the corruption system really affects players that we have these questions. And I don't think we have enough balancing insight to really be like, oh, I'll just PK the dude that's like taking my shit, you know? Like, that may just be a viable option. You might be like, oh yeah, I'm willing to incur like not being able to log out for 15 minutes and like 500 XP debt. Like, I don't really care about that. Like, that might be a real thing. And we just don't know the level of the corruption system. And if that's a thing, then, you know, good.
I think is still in line with the PvX philosophy of the game. So I wouldn't rule it out at some point far in the future. But generally,
like, we may not need these safe
in
purple
the game
zones
currently through the events
if the corruption system is balanced properly.
The flagging system that we have through the open seas. Flagging provisions that we've made. Like, there is a heavy emphasis of PvP in the game, as it rightfully should have, because we are a PvX game, and our conceptually designed philosophy is you build the world through PvE, you change it through PvP, right? Like, those are the competing factors.
I love that mantra.
I think where it stands now is sufficient.
You build the world through PvE, you change the world through PvP. That is such a dope mantra.
What stat or utility benefits will active block and active dodge give players, and what resource or cooldown are associated with them?
So the resource is going to be stamina.
Okay.
We are currently implementing, for the purposes of Alpha 2, a universal stamina system that all archetypes share. When it comes to
So everybody has the
active
same
block,
stamina level, kind of like
sprint,
ESO.
and dodge, those will be a part of a universal skill progression tree that players can choose to invest skill points into. And those skill points will share with their archetype active ability and passive ability skill points as well. So if they're going to divest themselves of further progress within their archetype in lieu of investing in the universal skill tree,
This is dope, by the way.
they will
I
have
love
access
this.
to benefits that those universal skill tree progressions provide. And some of those benefits do include stat bonuses when utilizing those universal skills. Some of them include different types of effects that can only be granted the player through the universal skill tree as well, such as the ability to potentially parry an attack, or something along those lines. We'll be talking about the universal skill tree
Parrying attacks,
somewhere
that's huge.
probably
Actually,
midsummer-ish time frame or late summer-ish time frame, because it's still actively being developed. But the idea is to have that be an additional knob of customization that influences the way your character plays.
So I love this because having this as a skill tree, like the universal skill tree, maybe taking away points from somewhere else in your skill tree and using it just for like a dodge or a parry or something like this, I think could be really interesting. I definitely want to see it. Obviously, we're not going to see it until like summer, maybe fall. So I'm excited to see what the universal skill tree has to evolve. But I think this is a really good way to like do this. Even if it is like you have your own universal skill tree point. Let me think. Hold on. Maybe I don't like it if you have a universal skill tree point system that's like all by itself that you have points that you can put into. Maybe I don't like that. I think you're right, Chibi, that it adds sacrifice and risk and reward. And like you can't just be like the super mobile healer while doing like your max healing at the same time. Like you have to like think about it and be like, oh well, maybe I just want to be defensive and like maybe it is worth giving up a point in my cleric tree to be able to parry an attack so that I can get away or do something or like have some sort of reaction. Does it just make dodge, parry, sprint necessary dumps for stats to be in competitive? Maybe. Yeah, it's very possible. But like, do you want a parry on your skill bar if you're PvEing? Probably not. I don't know about sprint being on a universal skill bar. I feel like everybody just wants sprint. I feel like that would just be a dump stat for sure. There are certain things where you're like, is it good to have on a skills tree or should the player just innately have that? And that's a good question to ask. Yeah, I definitely think that's a good question to ask for sure. But as far as like the universal skill tree just being a thing and like using some sort of resource to like manage, I think is a good thing. I know a lot of the questions coming up would be like, how many resources am I juggling? I'm juggling mana, I'm juggling health, I'm juggling stamina, I'm juggling my rage, my momentum or whatever. Like that's a lot of stuff to juggle and you have to like think about all these things. It's like, yeah, that is a lot to juggle, but I also think that there is like a skill in that almost. It is resource overload for a lot of people, true. But I definitely think there's skill to it. And it's not like it's a system that's like super complex unless you're making the ability resource managements not make sense, then it makes it complex. But if you're designing it properly to like, oh, you should be able to do this much at this level or whatever, and it should be pretty static leveling up and it doesn't matter. Like maybe it's like a linear progression, like, oh, you can block 3 times at like level 1, but at level 5 or at level 25 you can block like 5 times or 10 times. Like maybe if it's something like that, it's less manageable, like less headachy to manage. I don't know. It's definitely something to think about for sure. I'll have to think more on it. I don't know if I have a real opinion until like I start seeing numbers and stuff. I'll definitely have to test it now in A2 or whenever it comes out.
And just as a small follow-up, do you plan on any archetypes specializing in those core combat skills better than others? Like, will the tank have things in their tree to be even better at it?
Because it's a universal progression tree, the intent is to provide interactions with all the archetypes. So
Right.
it's not going to be, specifically more beneficial for one archetype over the other. The intent is that each of the archetypes will have some synergy, interaction, benefit to their general kit identity,
which is
through
good.
the universal skill tree, and that's a viable option for you.
Lovely. Thank you.
Okay, so
Woo!
during
More
the
energy.
Alpha 2 Fighter Archetype preview, we at Loreforged loved the chanting of the Mukma Goblin Shaman as they were channeling their spells. So the question that came up for us was, can we
This one's a pretty short answer.
that there is
I
a
like this one.
possibility of discoverable dialects in Ashes of Creation?
So first, I just want to say that audio team did a great job, obviously, with those incantations that the goblins were citing. And one of the things that still sticks with me, and probably with many of you there in their community and you guys here, is the games we've played, the MMOs we've played. We can probably recall the most often said thing by an NPC or when we cast. and even I'll be playing D&D, like tabletop D&D, and I'm going to roll my dice and I'll incant the spell chanting from the prophet in Lineage 2. I'll be like, empowering desire, champagne, I'll throw the dice out.
I love
that. So
I love that so much.
I think that it's obviously very important that we have not just the audio component of that incantation, but memorable ones that we will hear often and associate when we hear, either the good times we've had in that game or the bad times or whatever, right? So to answer your question, are there dialects?
I'm so bad at the Murloc sound, but
right
that's
now,
what I was thinking of.
The
I'm sorry.
incantations are relatively ad-libbed, right? They're not
I hate
not
the
being
Murlocs,
sourced
dude.
currently from
No
a
Murlocs.
comprehensive dialect library of the languages that each of the cultures have. Long term, I would love to continue to flesh out the identity of our cultures through going down that path, but it's just not something we've prioritized currently as a result of needing to develop the game. But I will say that Wynn has
it's
done
just so
a
memorable
phenomenal job already in authoring some great influences and themes for the sound types that even our minor factions have, so that the audio team can reference them when authoring the sound effects for those creatures. And so that is something that, while it's not fully fleshed out, we do have references that Wynn has compiled for the major cultures and some of the minor cultures so far.
Yeah, I definitely love that.
Well, I'm sure Tolkien's grandkids are just kicking around somewhere. You could give them a call and see what they're up to. So
we could hit up George R.R. Martin. George R.R. Martin, and see if he can get us something in the next 10 years.
You've never seen me probably at my workstation.
No, maybe.
I'm actively on the development floor currently, and it's only because I joined this call 2 minutes before we went live. Because it's been a very busy morning, but
I imagine.
Other than that, you do get to see now the development floor. This is the design section.
A lot of LG monitors.
I am in the design area.
Okay, so this, Steven, might be a very easy question to answer, and I hope it's a yes. Will there be any kind of a trial quest to test out all of the secondary archetypes?
I think this is going to be a letdown for a lot of people, this question.
Decision, when selecting your secondary archetype at level 25. A lot of players are fearing that you get to level 25 and you just have to choose one, and you're not going to be able to try like the other 7 to see what would vibe with you.
Got it. Well, first, I will say that we do intend to allow players to switch between secondary archetypes. We've talked about that in the past. So even if you do make a choice there, that is something that you can change. It won't be permanent. Your primary archetype you cannot change. Your secondary archetype you can. With that being said, we do not currently have designs that are intended to provide a preview period for players. You know, and maybe that's just more of an old school kind of thing. I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea of that, right? Giving players,
I don't know how I feel about it.
Preview. But
like if I could like
for at the moment.
preview like their skill tree or something, that'd be nice.
Your selection, you go and you do the quest, and that's your secondary archetype, and then there's a quest that you can take in order to.
Because otherwise, it's just like people are just going to third party this, right?
That's the current design.
They're just going to look on a website.
Is the intent for changing it going to still be a long process?
This kind of goes like with the guild thing, like the you want to keep the player in the game, right? You don't want them to leave to go look up a guide or something. I think if you add like just a UI thing of like, hey, these are your possible skills when you take this secondary archetype, or like these are like possible augments that you could have, maybe that's just better, because otherwise they're just going to go online and be like, well, what is best for my class? What is best for me to do? Like, what does this look like? Like that type of thing. Like, I think this is probably going to disappoint a lot of people, and they're going to be really upset about this. But at the end of the day, people are still just going to play and pick what they want to play. So maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe it is something that they're willing to take a hit on. All right, hold on, what's going on in chat? That's the first thing I saw in chat during if you got him, it would just be about goblin incest. Oh god, what? Yeah, man, it's a building character in D&D. You theory craft your character to max level before you play something you want to do. It's really rough to make it really important choice that you spend hundreds of hours doing only to find out that you hate it 100 hours in. Yeah, that's definitely true. Like Steven said, you can change it. There will be a longer quest that is, associated with it. We don't know, like, you could probably just like respec whenever you do that. So it's probably not the biggest deal. It's not like you're like sacrificing hundreds of hours, but like it is going to take time. It is going to be a little bit of annoying. I do know some people that they don't even theory craft their character. They just go like, all right, what's my next level? And they just click and go through and like, oh, that sounds cool. And then they play it and they're like, I don't like this. Can I change this DM? And then like the DM changes it. So I feel like it's very similar to that. I wouldn't say that like you're just wasting time for your primary, not for your secondary. Yeah, but I think primary is pretty easy to figure out what you want to do, right? I guess if you're thinking about like secondary augments and the class system is actually like extremely different, maybe there is an issue with that. Maybe something that me or somebody in the community needs to do during Alpha 2 is like really give out like explanations of like the dynamics of each primary archetype so that people can really decide what they want to do. Maybe that is a community thing that we need to do. So that we can provide people those resources. Yeah, that might be something I try to do. Especially since I'm playing A2. I'll be being like, hey, this is what this looks like at level 1, at level 5, at level 10, at level 15, etc. And then maybe I could try to like make some videos so that like nobody makes the wrong, quote unquote, wrong primary archetype change. I do notice that that's a big issue when I like play MMOs and stuff. I'm like, all right, what's meta, what's strong, what has my playstyle type thing, and there's not a lot of good videos. It's just like max level builds, and they're just like, well, you're gonna use your 3 arcane sigils that I have no idea about because I'm a new player, and they're like, you're gonna just level up this skill tree up to level 30 and stuff like that, and that's really annoying. Like I just want to know, like, is this gonna be fun playing through? Like, is this fun? So maybe I make some videos like that. Maybe that, because I know that's something I hate. So I probably will.
There is some level of investment when you want to choose to change that class identity. Yes.
Okay. Sounds good.
Right.
And just
So-
to be clear, just to be clear, I just want to comment on why that is. Some people may say, well, that feels cumbersome, right? Like, let me play how I want to play, which to a degree I agree with. However, there is something to be said about making a choice and that choice having consequences. Consequences not always bad, positive, but it lends to establishing an identity and a reputation, right? Many times in older games that I've played, older MMOs, I will see a person's name and I will know that they are one of the server's best tanks.
Yeah.
Right. And
For
I don't
sure.
have to guess what build they're on that day. Right. It's most likely they're a tank. They are a tank. Like they can't change that. Right. That provides a different sense of community when
interesting.
you're on a server than just everyone can be anything at any time. Right. And so, I want to try to replicate that by having the choices be more meaningful. And
So
provide
at
that
player
identity.
inconvenience, it
Sounds great.
leads to a different outcome. Okay.
So Annie and I plan
I
to
can't
have
hate it.
the
I can't
Chaos
hate
and
his
Waste
perspective.
cartel, but we'll
I
probably
can
be like a
definitely see
smaller
the
guild.
annoying
So
part
this one's
as like a
focused around
player
that.
when you're like building the thing.
Smaller guilds can opt to enhance their passive skills as a strategic choice over increasing membership size. Could you elaborate on the passive skills available to smaller guilds and how they enable them to remain competitive against larger guilds in various gameplay scenarios?
So my understanding of the system is basically like, if you have a smaller guild, say like 50 members, you have so many passive skills that you can like level up, and you have higher vertical progression as a smaller guild, but as a bigger guild you have larger like horizontal progression, that you might be able to like have more abilities or more stuff. You just might not go as quite as deep, or maybe you do go quite as deep but you're just a large guild focused on that one thing. So I mean, interesting way that they combat guild size. I think that's one way to combat like mega guilds and stuff like that. They're even capping it at 300 members. So even if you go over like 300 members and you create like a second guild, it's not, you only have so many alliances to do for like your node or whatever. I don't think mega guilds will be, server rulers or anything like that. But I definitely think they'll have impact. They'll definitely have an impact on the server for sure.
And to be honest, like that is a delicate line to play with, because what happens when you make those passive abilities too strong,
You can hop into the mist and just
then
build.
you create the meta of how guild
I played Guild Wars 2 and I've never done that
on this game.
Whoops.
And so it means that if it's a zero-sum choice between I either take the passives or I'm bad, it's like everyone's going to take the passive. So there has to be some complement between, why guilds want to have expansion options versus passives. And so passives will be delegated to certain groups within the guild. And the core groups will have stronger passive access. So when you first form a guild and you're level 0, you may have 30 guild slots available to you, right? And that's your core guild group. And you can move people in and out of that group because when you get expansion slots, they form separate groups in the guild structure.
Oh, wait, that's massive.
A knight or a squadron group, right? Whatever you're going to want to call it, because you can customize it based on the guild. And then those groups will have access to certain types of passives. Some of the passive types will be horizontal, some will be vertical, and it will be dependent on where you as a guild member are placed within those groups. And the placement within those groups are determined by the guild administrators, right? And so guilds will then spend currency as well as skill points to invest in those passives for those particular groups.
Oh, shit.
And so what we want to do is we want to maintain the strongest passives for the central groups and allow it to decrease in power going outward from there. So even guilds that select to go expansionist still have some passive abilities that they can spec into. But the guilds that choose to stay smaller, they can concert their skill points towards the more central groups, leveling up those passives to higher strengths. And those passive types are things like waterfall stat augments, crit rate, regen values, and then they can get a little bit more intricate. with the types of effects that they have, like, you know, negating an attack, excuse me, a spell attack against you as a target every 30 seconds or something.
Wait a minute. Being in a guild seems so strong. What? You do not want to go guildless in Ashes.
But the intent is for them to be impactful.
All right, cool.
Don't go guildless.
I think that might
you will be strong if you're in a guild.
People asking more questions than that it may have answered.
I think we all want to follow up.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's hidden in that mushy
what is the
pile of
intended
info.
time to kill in both 1v1 or group PvP scenarios? Will players in solo or outnumbered PvP scenarios have ways to defeat larger groups or punish them for stacking too close to each other?
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, that's 2 questions. Is that 2 questions?
Who's counting at this point?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Steven. Just let it happen.
Okay, so what was the first question? The first question is, what is the intended TTK for 1v1s?
Yeah, or any PvP scenario, whether it's 1v1 or you can answer it separately, 1v1 or group PvP.
Okay, so you know, right now, if I were to say average TTK between average leveled characters and same level characters and average gear score, I would say that we're probably talking anywhere from, you know, 10 to 15 seconds, upwards of 30 seconds, depending on the archetype.
I think that's fine. That seems fine.
So, you know, obviously the more restorative archetypes, like a cleric or whatever, might be able to last longer, or a tank might be able to last longer. If they're facing another tank, or if they're facing another cleric, right, then it's going to be like a, you know,
support
or something.
Support battle.
And then if you're talking about, you know, 2 DPSs against each other, that's going to be real fast.
Yeah.
So I would say that's generally the intent. Now, what does that mean when talking about like group play? That means that if you are
people are
really
going to get
organized
nuked
in the way that you have
target priority,
targeting,
big,
and target assists, and that you call, you know, raid calling, like there is opportunities there to have multiple DPSs take out a target real quick, right? And because of that type of precision gameplay, it really raises the skill ceiling when talking about organization and how players play with each other, right? Because now the room for error is smaller. And that is something that I think is important in any competitive style of game, which a PvX game is relatively competitive. So that's why we tend to go on the smaller TTK side. And then now what was your second question?
So I'm gonna pause here. Like, hold on 1 second. So I mean, like, this is pretty good in my opinion. Like 10 to 15 seconds, like even for like a rogue, that's kind of a long time. 10 seconds is a long time in gaming world. I think people being mad at like 10 seconds probably don't PvP that often, or like are really worried about getting nuked by multiple members. And like the multiple members part, valid, but I mean, like, it's the same thing like world bosses, where they just become HP, you just grind fest, and you're just like, how many abilities do I gotta put into this guy before he dies, you know? And if you have like 500 people doing the same thing, it's just an HP grind fest. It's not very fun. I don't think not killing people is fun. I think 10 seconds is a good time to react, to like, you know, put space between you and your engager, and you can like react and do something about it. You may even be able to turn the tables if they don't hit their skills properly, right? You know, if they miss their skills, then yeah, it's a big problem. So I think 10 seconds is even that's on the lower end. That's still that's like a long enough time for you to be able to react. Like, I play League and people die in like a second, less than a second. You just get absolutely blown up if they like do target priority properly. Like, sorry, even if you're a tank, you get target priority is a thing, but like even with network latency, ping, all this stuff in MMOs, 10 seconds is a pretty valuable amount of time. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, even on the lower end. So yeah, I think it's all fine.
outnumbered? Like, would players in a smaller group have a chance to fight a larger group?
Yeah,
Like,
of
are there
course
going
it's
to
going
be
to happen.
AoEs that do more damage based on how many people are within this proximity? Ways to combat larger groups and not just let sheer numbers like determine the victory.
Well, okay, that's so somewhat connected, right? Because if we're talking about smaller TTK numbers, then the room for error being less, that means that you can have a scenario where a larger group, and by definition a Zerg, which is less organized,
by definition
less
a
skilled
Zerg
players, but are numbers over skill, there is now a better opportunity for the smaller group to prevail against the larger group if they are better organized and more skillful, which tends to be the case in smaller groups.
Yep.
Right? So intrinsically, those two philosophies are tied to one another, right? The shorter TTK and the how do you solve the Zerg problem?
Yeah,
well,
TTK for 1v1s is mostly meaningless unless you're in the open world.
Okay, so I made Cash and JB let me ask an econ question. So here it comes. If everything that I have read is true, stating that auction houses, markets, player stalls are all exclusively
this is a really good clarification by Lord
node
Forge.
buildings, then what does trade look like in the other three node types?
I see. Okay, so first we have to vet the supposition.
Oh, there will be group play in the open world, but there will also be solo play. I'm just saying that there's multiple scenarios.
Nodes are absent of markets. All nodes by default have a market building. Auction houses, as you described, are present within the economic nodes. So that is a true distinction. However,
huge.
The market buildings do provide player stalls. So those are also not delegated just to economic nodes within the vicinity of the market, and depending on the upgrades you choose and the level of your node.
A lot of people were upset about this.
So
they're like, oh no, not MapleStory businesses. But like, I thought that was the cool thing about like MapleStory, and like I think Ragnarok Online did this too. Like you just like walk around the world and people have like their stalls. I thought that was a good thing. I thought that like invited open world like interaction, like community. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're just mad about all the chat bubbles that were like happening on the board. But I think if you just do like your stall and then like people can go up and interact with it and be like, oh, what does this guy got? You know, like I think it's cool. I liked that thing. That really opened up for like community interaction for me, I thought.
Players can utilize those in non-economic nodes. In addition, you can also use player shops, which require certificates in order to use. But once you have a certificate, you can then place your player shop within the vicinity of a node's market, any node's market. So basically what that means is
you can go to any node and drop your shop.
You'll take that certificate and your character will sit down in place, and they will spawn a UI billboard above them where you get to make a brief advertisement of what your shop is. And any player can come up to you and they can interact with your character and see your shop that you have listed goods for.
Bro, I actually missed this in the show. I'm so glad he's actually repeating what I just said.
So that's the difference between player stalls and the player shop system. The benefit that economic nodes markets have over non-economic node markets is that their player shop certificates, when sold from a Metropolis economic node, I believe, can be placed anywhere in the world, independent of market proximity.
Oh,
so you could be at a dungeon and set up your player shop there, and it's like, hey, you want to buy some health pots? You can grab your health pots and you can set up there. So yeah.
Woo! Very cool. Thank you. That actually answers quite a bit.
That's insane.
Okay, sorry, my mind just got blown. So sorry.
I never thought about the dungeon seller.
This is
Holy shit.
A question from my community. It's actually a pretty straightforward question. What do node types look like in this current iteration of the build? And will all node types be available to test at the start of Alpha 2?
This is a good question.
No, not all node types will be available to test at the start of Alpha 2.
Kind of expected this. We haven't seen anything from it.
Currently,
but,
the state of nodes is science.
What this really shouts out to me is that Alpha 2 quarter 3 definitely happening, because they are just saying like this is just not going to be an Alpha 2 like at the start. So like I'm excited. They're not. This is less of a delay on Alpha 2, and this is more of just like, no, it just won't be there, and we'll put it in later. And like, that's great. I'd love to hear that.
Scientific is our academic or scientific, what people will call nodes, and that is an election,
which is totally
method,
fine.
right? That is the voting method. We have
take your time
yet stood up the other node types, and it is likely that at the entrance of Alpha 2, we will be only using the election method for node mayorship. Again,
I wonder
Alpha
how many
2, however,
nodes will be there in Alpha 2.
Additional updates as we
like at the start
Alpha 2, right? And
those we only had 3 in Alpha 1.
As we test things that are currently getting developed and implemented, we will.
That's a big lie. That's a huge ass lie. I think we had like 10 or 15.
In short order, a lot of that will be node type stuff.
There's like 3 of the main ones around the starting area, and then there was like some on the outskirts. You know.
Is standing up the
but there's like technically only 4 that we could really build, maybe 5 that we could really build.
Currently testing what we need to test
because of the questing areas,
the interaction of the player government with the build systems, the policies, everything that goes into managing a node. We're servicing that through the academic scientific node type.
And just to, I guess, follow up a little bit. So does that mean that other nodes that are like military, because again, they're all hard coded, right? So are those offline? Like
no, it means that currently they are designated as scientific or academic.
They'll all be scientific.
Yep.
Correct. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't be testing certain features before implementing.
Wait, that's kind of cool. So it seems like they have the ability to make any node any type. But as Vladis was saying, he's like, aren't they just hard coded? I'm curious. It makes me really curious. Like, it seems like they could just like make any node any type they want, given like whatever. So maybe this adds a lot of server diversity in the future. Maybe ? They are hard coded as of right now. This is just a very, very, very hopeful thing. Not real.
The additional node types that relate to a militaristic node or a divine node, such as through our narrative systems. We will likely be testing and reflecting different cultural aspects of the node type through commissions that are available, through the different narrative types that are available that will be military, divine, and economic. But when it comes to the government systems, that will be scientific to start.
The bashes.
Gotcha.
All right. So we've learned that the raid difficulty adapts dynamically based off of player performance and group composition. And
I'm thinking like 3-4 years after launch, like way in the future, like maybe
implementation
nodes can be
the adapted scaling
different
during raids,
node types,
especially when there's PvP involved.
Definitely not at launch.
Could you explain if there are mechanisms, particularly during boss fights, that protect players from PvP interactions such as room locks, or are all raids intended to remain fully open to PvP?
Yeah. So as I said, when we were talking about the dungeons earlier, it's nice that some dungeons do have instancing. Some boss rooms are instanced.
Mm-hmm.
In those locations, yes, they will be serviced either through a room lock or some other mechanism that, protects the engagement, the environment of that encounter.
I just think of like, you're in a PvE dungeon, you've been fighting with like this other group, like grinding through it, and like you've been like battling back and forth, like some of your members are like respawning, they're coming up, climbing through the dungeon, you're just like, we gotta make it to the boss first, we gotta make it to the boss first so that we get the raid and stuff, and then you finally make it to the room and a wall just blocks their party off from yours, and it's just like a physical wall that just like goes up. That would be so sick. That'd be so sick in my opinion. And then like you're just trapped in that room with the boss, and you're like, okay, now we have so many resources that like, I've already used like 6 of my health potions. Now I have to like actually fight the boss at like less inventory than I had originally planned for, or something like that. I think that's an interesting mechanic for just like gameplay interactions.
Who is intended to be there. But the majority of our encounters can be interrupted, right? They are open world. And in those events where you have two groups that are coming together that might be at war with one another, where open flagging is not necessary, they are just flagged combatants with one another, they're going to have to manage
what's up,
the battlefield
Dudley?
between what they're achieving in the PvE encounter, right?
What up, my boy?
Versus now what they're experiencing in the dynamic player versus player encounter. And some of the effects that we have which allow the victors of those engagements to continue forward with the PvE experience is thing like are things like stat dampening.
I need to give it to Chibi too.
Death debuff. And the death debuff, when
hey,
activated multiple times for the losing party, will continue to stack, and it will gain time until eventually their ability to interrupt you is now essentially decimated through these stacks of debuffs that they've received through continually losing the fight.
This is dope.
I love this explanation. Okay, let's let a person prevail.
I just follow up real quick. So is the dynamic adaptation only in those instance ones, or is that meant to also be in the open world PvP?
You're talking about the dynamic AI.
Oh yeah. That's a good good clarification.
The encounter, so the encounter design is dynamic regardless of if it's instanced or not.
Okay.
And the reason for that dynamicism, well, first of all, there's a couple of approaches to the dynamicism there. One is that how does the state tree of the NPC respond?
Thanks for the follow. Thank you for coming, Ashes.
Players? Well, it weights certain actions and behaviors based off of what the players are doing. And as it weights those things, it makes decisions that will be unique according to the encounter that's occurring in front of it. So each time might be different as a result of that. That's one section. In addition, when we talk about the adaptive scaling, this isn't scaling in like power relation to the level of the player. This is scaling in the quantity of participants, right? And that means that it starts to weight the behaviors that include AoE actions higher than others as a result of the number of players who are present.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Intrinsically increases the challenge rating of the encounter because those AoE abilities are providing a higher return on DPS overall to the raid encounter for the monster.
So the dynamically changing mobs will, so if you have like two groups that are going in and they're contesting over these mobs, not only does the mechanics increase, like the AoE mechanics and stuff, but probably their health levels, their damage values, their armor and magic resistance levels probably change as well. This is all probably variable based on dungeon or area and difficulty of the area. These are all tweakable numbers to balance around if like people are like, oh, this is too hard, or like, oh, people are gaming the system this way so that like you can't actually progress through the dungeon. There's like some griefing involved. I can imagine there's a lot of different complaints that could happen, but it's kind of part of the game. And honestly, I think there's going to be a lot of complaining in Ashes. I think there's going to be so much complaining in Ashes. If you just look at any other gaming subreddit, forum, anything, like it is almost all negative, by the way. But like I think of reviews and like comments on gaming sections as, you know, they are meant to be places to vent out your frustrations. Like if I look at like reviews for a restaurant, I am more likely to see negative reviews than I am to see positive reviews, right? So like that's how I view like gaming forums and Reddit. Is it's a way for people to vent out their frustrations, and it's going to be a lot of complaining, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the majority's point of view. So there, I imagine there's going to be a lot of complaining around Ashes. There's going to be a lot of complaining around like these types of things, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the game is bad, but there may be like some frustrations, and there may be some valid points. There may be some like things that are like, well, that's just the game. Sorry, play another one. Like there may be some of those things happening, but I'm excited to see all the tiers. I'm excited to see all the tiers. Let me just say that.
Thanks.
I'm gonna piggyback off of Jamie's amazing question and kind of stick with dungeons to a certain extent. Risk versus reward seems to be involved in all systems. Do you feel risk such as death penalties or the threat of being PK'd during dungeon content will lead to players zerging world bosses and dungeons to minimize said risk? thus trivializing some content and experiences regardless of that planned difficulty scaling you just spoke about?
Well, I think another part of our design that is more old school, but speaks exactly to this thought, is that the reward is finite.
That's a fucking big drop.
What that means is, in a lot of modern MMOs,
rewards are finite.
Each person gets their own reward for participating. And back in the day, the one person was the loot master. They would interact with the raid boss, and then there would be some guild-driven system or alliance-driven system that would determine who's next on the list to get this bow, or who's the crafter that deserves this master legendary recipe, or where does this, legendary material go, right? It's not that, oh, everybody got your loot box because we all completed the boss together. Everyone gets the auto-granted reward from the quest of completing the boss together. Right, what people came for.
Look at all of them smiling.
Reward, the reason why alliances and guilds organized the raid to go defeat the dragon was because the dragon bow dropped, and there was only one that dropped.
Yep.
Right. So the more people you take, the more slices of the finite pie you have to deliver, which reduces the reward structure.
Oh, wait.
So if you're going to reduce risk, you must reduce reward.
So when he says the rewards are finite, and you're talking about like the group pool, well, I'll answer this question first. At this point, following the game dev is like watching a train crash. I'm just here for the entertainment. I have a small hope for the game will succeed. MMO players are just all battered wives at this point. True. We expect the beating and stick around after. I mean, it could be a train crash. Like I absolutely think so. Like, but it's going to be a fun train crash. I think at the most, at the least, it's going to be a fun train crash, just simply because, like, oh man, there's so many controversial like things, but it's also like things that players have been asking for. So I'm not even sure, like, where do we put where do we put it? Like, I'm just proud to be a part of the journey, like it's going to be a lot of fun. And the fact that we get to have like this type of feedback and they actually like respond to the feedback, that's all I could ask for in a gaming dev. Like, the closest thing that I've seen in recent times is League of Legends. Like, I don't see game developers really interact with their community as much as like League of Legends devs do. Like, they're on Twitter, they're talking to people, they're talking to content creators, they're explaining their reasonings. You have like freak patch notes rundowns. You have like all of these things. That is the only gaming development community other than Intrepid that I've seen that really interacts. Maybe minus Lost Ark and Tarkov. And Lost Ark and Tarkov, you know how those games are going right now. Like those games are like, Tarkov has the most dedicated community, and to be able to piss off your community that is like in love with your game is quite a skill, I think. So I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but like they fucked up. they fucked up. But yeah. Oh fuck! What was I talking about? I got off on a tangent. I'm gonna watch this a second.
Right.
So resource scarcity. So my question was, does the boss have like a 100%? Well, maybe not a 100% drop loot table, but like, say he has 100 items that you can like distribute out. And it's only those 100 items every single time, so you have to just do it until you get like 5 dragon bones or whatever, and you just like pass that out to the person that is making the gear. Or is it like over time it drops less things? Like, that's kind of my question on what does it mean by finite? I'm assuming it's option 1. I'm assuming it's like you have like 100% drop to drop 1 dragon bone, and then you can divvy that out to whoever wants that dragon bone. That's my assumption. So yeah, finite as in per raid, not overtime. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I agree. I think that's the truth. I when I first saw it, I was like, overtime? That's crazy. I've never seen that before. But Now that I've given it a little bit more time to think about it, like, yeah, I definitely think it's finite per raid. I think you're right.
The more slices of the finite pie you have to deliver, which reduces the reward structure. So if you're going to reduce risk, you must reduce reward.
Like you could get like the
Love that.
the cookie wand,
so good.
and only one person in the raid could have it, or like
that sounds
the
like
Defias leather armor
Just
or whatever
end
it
the
is.
podcast right there, I think.
The mic drop moment.
I know, right? Okay, so we're gonna switch gears here just a little bit. We all know that the freeholds will be difficult to attain, but one of the alternative ways that we've heard of is to experience the freeholds is the guild freehold.
This is
there
a
anything
big
that you can
thing. I
tell
was
us
always
about the
asking
guild
about this.
freehold system?
Yes, I can tell you some things about the guild freehold
Just the
system.
fact that
So,
there is a guild freehold separate from
one
the
thing
player
that
freehold
we've
is
been,
massive.
discussing on the design side, some things that I've been
Massive.
thinking about with regards to what differentiates a guild freehold from a freehold, right? A guild freehold is not just a finite piece of space like the player freeholds are that everybody gets to share in. There are going to be likely expandable plots that are available around the guild freehold where
Wait, hold on.
About the guild.
Discussing on the design side some things that I've been thinking about with regards to what differentiates a guild freehold from a freehold, right? A guild freehold is not just a finite piece of space like the player freeholds are that everybody gets to share in. There are going to be likely expandable plots that are available around the guild freehold where members of the guild can have access to themselves that are administered by the guild master or whoever he designates to administer it. He or she designates to administer it. Where players can lay down an additional small plot of land to do farming on, to potentially do livestock raising, or to make other freehold endeavors. So the guild hall is central to those additional plots around it, of which will be finite that the guild will determine who gets.
So
Very
my
cool.
question
One quick
is,
follow-up on that.
is the guild hall itself just like 4-room, big fancy opening, and like guild master's bedroom, or is it like you have like a barracks of like sleeping beds, and then like the expandable plots you can just have like your craftables, like your processors on and building those plots on? Or is it like when you give that plot to that player, they can build like their own little house on it, like their own little freehold, but just like on a much smaller scale? That's my main question is like, what does it mean to have like the expandable plot given to the players? Is it like their smaller freehold? I don't know what that means.
Yes. If you have a guild hall, can you still have a tavern?
If you have a guild hall, yes, you can still have a tavern. Those are separate systems.
That's so perfect.
So the tavern system is administered by the node.
That's what I thought. That's what I'm thinking too.
The node essentially gives out.
So I'm thinking like the guild hall like has like guild member barracks, but you only have like 10 rooms or something to give out.
To customize the vendor table,
maybe even less
things that they create for.
Like here, maybe I can pull something up. Hold on, I'm gonna pull something up. Off on the side here. I am taking a forever old game, but man, Ashes just reminds me so much of it. Like, so you'd have like these little guild halls in Tibia here. You guys see that? Yeah, you can. You'd have like these little guild halls that have like their own little rooms and stuff like that. And each of these little rooms would have permissions based on, you know, the guild in it. So you have like your floor +1, floor +2, floor +3, and then you also have your basement. So this would be like a little tavern area. But yeah, like I imagine like each guild member would have like their own little room with like their permissions that are allowed in. Obviously the guild master or whoever would have master permissions and would be able to walk into anybody's room if they wanted to, as it's, you know, their guild. So I feel like that's probably a thing that they're gonna do with like the main guild hall, and then the expansive plots are like for people to do like their farming, their livestock and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not gonna fill all 300 members, but it may fill like the top 10, the top 15 maybe. So I think that's a possible way that they could do that.
Hall and other types of services.
That way you're not like
Very cool. Thank you.
giving away so much land real estate by like making every
Steven,
single
just to
member or not or like
you've
a bunch
been
of members have like
teasing
expandable
Rogue
plots.
for over a year.
Mm.
So this next question
Oh no,
is about the Rogue.
it's the big letdown.
So will we see
No.
anything regarding the Rogue prior to Alpha 2? And more specifically, how will the Rogue stealth?
So this was my big worry. Is I was like, there's only like 2 months left before Q3, and we haven't even gotten Bard yet. Like, what's gonna happen? I don't think Rogue's gonna be shown. I don't even know if we're gonna get Summoner for A2, and
stealth mechanic work like in comparison to camouflage, or has that really been solidified? Can you tell us anything new?
No
with the
Rogue. At the start of A2.
So rogues do have true stealth. Which
stealth.
means that unlike camouflage, where proximity matters in identifying the target, true stealth is not proximity dependent.
Okay, perfect. Okay, that answered one of my questions with camouflage too. So like camouflage is proximity dependent. So the further away you are, the less likely you are able to be seen. Huge. This is also very akin to League of Legends invisibility camouflage system. So I'm really, really glad that they're taking this as a look-see of like true invisibility versus like camouflage and how that interacts with the world. And they're also doing their own little flair with the UE5 camouflage system.
So that is something that differentiates obviously camouflage from the rogue stealth ability.
I like that.
I can give some unfortunate news.
Invisibility is annoying.
That the rogue will likely not be available at the start of Alpha 2.
Oh, Vladis.
I know.
He's in shambles.
I know.
Everybody.
We
Oh
are
my God,
choosing
Sonny.
Instead, this is a recent decision to focus more on
shock.
expanding the existing archetypes.
I'm so glad they have their webcams there.
Abilities and passive abilities, and we will be saving the rogue for the first update after the initial launch of Alpha 2. So
I was so
just not
devastated
gonna
actually when I
quite
first
make
heard
it
this.
for
I was
launch,
pissed.
but it is something that
But
will
I was
very
okay with
quickly
it.
be standing up as
Like,
as it is.
I would
part-
rather
key
see
part of the archetype
a good
testing,
archetype than
and Alpha 2.
nothing.
But yes, that is
Can just
Than a
a
bad
plan.
one.
quick
Sorry.
follow up then. Can you give us the list of the Alpha 2 classes?
just
I'm just going to skip it. It's just basically Rogue and Summoner are missing.
the classes.
I'm going to skip this.
To specific types. So this has a bit of a longer preface, and then I'll move to the question. But Grandmaster crafting stations are vital resources located within specific node tiers with access limited to node citizens. This setup implies that crafters might be bound to the Grandmaster stations of their home node, potentially restricting their crafting capabilities to specific types. Could you provide insight on the flexibility of the crafting system, specifically whether or not crafters can utilize Grandmaster stations outside of their home node, or if they are confined to the stations within their own node?
Okay, we spent a lot of time in Jamie's Discord, and I know this is going to be a really short answer afterwards, so that's why I'm going to preface this. On the wiki, currently, the Grandmaster stations are only usable by citizens of the home node. So, with that in mind, this is the preface of the whole question. And Steven basically debunks it immediately.
Crafters can use stations at any node.
Perfect.
That's important to note, right?
Which is
the difficulty
amazing.
is transiting the materials you need to the node where the crafting station exists, because the materials must be present there at that node. But the crafter can go to any node and craft at a crafting station. The benefits of being a citizen at the node that has the crafting station are significantly reduced fees to the point nearly of nothing, and additional benefits and access to unique enhancements to the craft if you're a citizen, right? Like depending if there's a relic available that grants the unique enhancement or something along those lines. So to answer that question, Grandmaster Crafters can go anywhere in the world and craft at a Grandmaster crafting station. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Perfect. Simple as that.
All right.
Because I mean, like, yeah,
What
if you were a crafter and you were going across the world and you're like, well, I'm like Grandmaster Crafter, but I can't craft at your node, your metropolis specifically, because, you know, I'm not a citizen, then it really, really limits the player, and it really limits the economy, I think. So having that distinction, being able to change the wiki to like say that you can craft anywhere in the world, that's a big boon. That's a big uppies.
Current full list of weapons planned, and could we have an update on how dual wielding will work, such as weapon options and relative weapon trees?
So, another twofer question.
I don't know what you're talking about, Stephen. I
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
One on
I'm
sentence.
seeing
Chill.
a trend here. Nice. I'm
Chill.
seeing a trend. Okay. So a list of our intended weapon groups at the launch of Alpha 2.
Even if you don't have the materials and someone else's node, they can provide mats while you provide the service. Yeah, exactly. Like being able to use that sort of, I don't know if it's like a flea market, but like just that level of trade to be like, hey, I have the materials, can you just build this and then I'll tip you? Like that's a good give back system in itself. And if the crafter can't craft because they're not the citizen of the node, then it would be a whole mess, it'd just be a big mess.
Are one-handed maces.
Also, I don't think like I know this point is basically mute because it was proven, but like you should be able to craft anywhere. Like your skill persists as a person no matter where you are, as long as you have the tools and you have the materials. So like it's good they did it that way.
One-handed swords, wands, spell books,
Orbs?
longbow, short bow, two-handed swords, two-handed spears, and dual-wielded daggers.
Dual-wielded daggers.
For the rogue.
And so for the follow-up to that with the dual-wielding portion, so are daggers, can we infer that daggers are the only dual-wield weapon?
And by the way, just real quick, there may be other weapon types that are present as well, but these are the groups that will have their weapon skill tree fleshed out. So,
okay.
And those other types of weapons that are present, like model form, will likely be categorized into one of these groups so that they have skills.
I think I understand what you're saying. So let me go through the groups one more time.
Question. So a list of our intended
I want to make sure I have a full grasp on this before I like actually speak my opinion on it.
Longbow of Alpha 2 are one.
And this is only for Alpha 2. So there will be more weapons, possibly?
One-handed maces.
One-handed maces.
One-handed swords. Wands. Spell books. Longbow. Short bow. Two-handed swords. Two-handed spears. And dual-wielded daggers.
Okay, so in Alpha 2, these are going to be the weapon skills trees that are fleshed out. Possibly more to come. But this is what I imagine. And this is also... God, I keep comparing Ashes of Creation to Tibia, but man, it just reminds me so much of Tibia, and I love it. I love every bit of it. Tibia was so much fun. So I'm just going to say, out of the bat, Tibia had blades, axe, club, distance, and magic. Those were the 5 weapon skill trees that you could, skill into. So it looks like it's in Ashes of Creation, it's variety. It's specifying not just one-handed swords and two-handed swords into a blade category and daggers into a blade category. They each have their own little category that you can level up and skill up, which I think is amazing. I think character progression is definitely a very, very good way to reward time without overbalancing skill, like or overbalancing like gear score and stuff like that. I have a pretty poorly done video on YouTube right now, the fundamental problem in MMOs, where I talk about how I think gear scoring is basically the fundamental issue in MMOs when it comes to longevity and player retention and new players coming into the game. I definitely think I could probably elaborate more on that just in a better way since I've given it time and since I've made that video. But basically, I think player progression, character progression, like skill progression, horizontal progression, in that way are all ways to allow a player to invest time in without making the player overpowered. And it also doesn't create a bad gameplay loop with having to do band-aid fixes for increasing gear score over time so that it like creates a gap between new players and the players that love playing the game and have been playing since like day one, you know? So like your core game level of players. So I definitely think that having these different weapon skill tree paths is definitely a good way of introducing character and horizontal progression, as well as some form of vertical progression, right? Because you are getting stronger as you're getting these weapons skill trees. So I definitely love this system. I just can't wait to test it all out and say a bunch of balance issues with it.
Dual wielded daggers. And so for the follow up to that, with the dual wielding portion, so are daggers, can we infer that daggers are the only dual wield weapon?
And by the way, just real quick, there may be other weapon types that are present as well. There you go. But these are the groups that will have their weapon skill tree fleshed out. So
okay.
And those other types of weapons that are present, like model form, will likely be categorized into one of these groups. So that
yeah, it's interesting that they specify it's dual wielding daggers and not just dual wielding. It makes it sound like you can only dual wield daggers. So I appreciate Nice's follow up.
That they have skill tree progression until they get updated with their actual skill tree progression.
Okay.
Okay. And so what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
How would dual wielding work? And so can we infer that are daggers going to be the only dual wielding weapon? Or are you going to do a one-handed sword, one-handed mace?
Yes, you'll be able to do one-handed maces, one-handed swords.
Perfect.
2 one-handed swords.
I must have missed this when I first watched this. I'm glad I rewatched it.
All use the same dual weapon progression tree. So that's an important distinction.
Dual weapon tree. See.
However,
let's go.
The way we're servicing dual weapons is that they will occupy your main hand offhand.
Sorry, I'm gonna read this. IMO player levels and gear levels hamstring MMO longevity. I like the idea of more progression, both horizontal and vertical, coming from skill trees. Same. I'm glad you agree.
And matches, they will all use the same dual weapon progression tree. So that's an important distinction.
That's what I want to know.
However, the way we're servicing dual weapons is that they will occupy your main hand offhand, and you will have a specific recipe which includes the previously completed one-handed weapons that are intending to be dueled.
Interesting.
Lovely. And one thing I'm seeing a lot of people in chat ask about, will shields have their own weapon tree?
Oh shit, that's so interesting. You have to level up one-handed swords all the way up to max, and then you have to level up dual wielding you don't have to level it all the way to max, but like it will influence how your dual wielding tree reacts. Oh, that's so sick. That's so sick. That's so smart.
Shields will have shields will have a weapon tree as well.
That's awesome.
Oh no, wait, no. Do shields have a weapon tree? No, shields do not have a weapon tree.
Shields do not have a weapon tree.
I'm sorry. Shields do not have a weapon tree. They're an offhand. There will be passives within archetype trees that grant towards shield usage. So some archetypes.
So tanks will have better
benefit that. In addition, there will be a universal skill progression. The universal skill progression tree will have shield progression within it for the block action. So there are 2 places where speccing in skill points will give you more beneficial use of shields.
Okay, I'm done with my 10
questions.
He
was talking about crafting with the finished weapon bit? What do you mean?
That's 5 times 2, nice. You cheater. Okay, well, I think this is the last question.
Question would be, do the one-hand trees stay in effect when you dual wield? I would imagine so, but so obviously I'm not a designer. This probably isn't, just preface, this is all speculation, okay? So when you have your like one-handed short sword at like level 10 and you're dual wielding at like level 1, and say like the max level is like 100, and say you have like 10 short sword and 1 in dual wielding, you probably have your weapon skill tree, like your skill points that are like to level 10 on your short sword as your dual wielding, and your dual wielding increases, which allows you to do like skill points into your dual wielding tree. But you can only do it up to like level 10, and then it takes you to get up to like level 11, level 12, level 20, whatever, to start increasing the skill proficiency on your dual wielding as well. That's how I imagine it. I don't know if that's actually the case, so to be determined. Like you have to modify the actual weapon to be used for DW, but don't know. DW. Am I stupid? Should I know what DW means? Dual wielding, of course. Yeah. I don't think you have to modify it. I think it just has to be dual wieldable. It has to be able to be held in your offhand. Like, shield isn't going to be the only item that you can put in your offhand slot. You can put 2 daggers in your offhand, in your main hand and your offhand slot. But when you're dual wielding, it'll go like your XP will go into the dual wielding skill tree. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question? Like, I don't know how that really interacts with crafting, but yeah, I don't think it interacts with crafting at all. That's what I mean. I hope that answers that bit. I could be wrong. I think I'm right. I'm gonna hold the position that I think I'm right. That's important to have, right?
Here, and we're going to end it on a lore question. I was warned not to ask you lore questions, and we totally ignored that. So here we go.
Yeah.
What is the average person on Vera's experience with the essence?
I see your point,
Is
Splinter.
everybody using the essence in the same way, or is this something that's more like a rare gift that us as journeyman heroes have some sort of innate ability to tap into?
Okay, so this is basically like, is the mana in the world only available to us adventurers, us player characters, or is it available to the world around? Which I don't think so. I think it's pretty obvious that Minotaurs were casting magic and they were doing bubble shields and stuff like that. I think they have essence, you know? I don't think that they are not innately given essence on Vera. Tulnar Simeon should be able to dual wield greatswords. That would be sick. Oh my god, that'd be so sick. Why is there an ad? Why do I have ads? I'm so pissed. I'm sorry. I want to answer his question, so I'm just actually gonna wait for the ad to be done. So once the ad's done, I'll actually answer the question. I feel so bad about ads. I need to turn that off. I don't know how to turn it off. I'm stupid. Screw balance. Oh wait, it's not really a question that I'm answering, right? Like, that's just a cool thing. I just really like that. Yeah, are we all just the main character? That's a good question, but like, I don't think so. I don't think with the way that they've scripted Vera, especially with like everything being in like nodes. Yeah, I really don't think that we're just the main character of Vera. Just because the way nodes are set up, group play is set up, I don't think questing will be like, oh, hero, thank you for coming. I am so glad that you are the only one available to go kill this world boss that you need 40 other adventurers to go group up and do things with. Yeah, I don't think the questing is going to be like that. I don't think we're all the main hero in Vera. So yeah, I don't think so. But I definitely think this question taps on something that maybe wasn't answered. which is like the fighter having mana. That was such a big like, oh no, why does the fighter have mana? And the simple answer is that everybody in Vera has essence, and that you have to manage your resources just like everybody else. And having no resource as a mechanic other than your momentum, which momentum is like a multiplicative thing where like you get better abilities. It's not like it's taking anything away from you. The abilities that cost mana or essence are technically like the things that make you super strong. The cataclysm where you shoot spikes out of the ground. Like, you are using essence as a fighter. You are not just using your strength and your energy. Or like, I know a lot of people would be like, if you just change the bar to yellow and call it energy, like people would be happy. True. They probably would be, but they would also be wrong. So I do like the fact that they are saying like essence is a part of the world. Essence is your mana. And it does take mana to like I think of Nen, you know, like in Hunter x Hunter, where you're just like powering yourself up. You're like fortifying your muscles. You're doing like, you're like legit using some sort of mana or energy resource of your body to produce a grander effect than what you would normally be able to do. It's like Black Clover. I only watched like the first 40 episodes, but I'm assuming you're right. I'll assume you're right. Everyone is basically a mage, even a fighter. Yeah, we're all holding essence in our bodies because essence is like overflowing in Vera, and that's why the harbingers are there, and you're trying to corrupt the essence there, and they're trying to take it for themselves and hold themselves together by just like manipulating essence, right? That's the main thought of the lore. Tell me I'm wrong. I didn't deep dive into it, but that's what I gathered from the King Atrax story. I'm going to call him Atrax so many times. I'm so sorry. I apologize in advance. Atrax. It'd be cooler if he had two A's. Atrax.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, essence, the relationship of essence with the
I'm always right.
Common folk, the NPCs that you see around you.
You're always right. We're always right.
Certain people within this world have a greater ability to focus essence into stronger effects, aka magic, right?
Also, another thing, like when he says like certain users have a greater affinity, I think it just means like the people that kill more things, you're getting more XP, you're getting more essence. The essence is facilitating your XP bar, right? Like you are essentially killing a soul, which puts essence magicules into the atmosphere, and then you are taking portions of that in, and you are growing stronger with that, right? So essence is a way to explain game mechanics such as XP debt. When you die, you lose some of your essence, you have to get it back, right? You have to go out into the world and kill things again, or craft things and get XP, get essence, and become a stronger person. And that affinity grows within you as you accumulate all these all the essence in the world. So are we not just the others? Are we not just taking essence and manipulating it to better ourselves? Are we any worse than them? Thank you, Splinter, for the follow. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you.
Generally, among the player population, you are all
are we the baddies
of essence as a whole and capable of achieving great.
The others are misunderstood. Are you an other worshiper like me?
While everyone,
I feel like I'm a low-key other worshiper, but I don't think that's a game mechanic, so I don't know if I can. Well, I know I can't, but like,
in its use,
come on, Steven.
or study.
Come on.
Right. And so those more commoner people that you might see in the NPCs and narrative and dialogue and whatnot, many of them are not going to be as adept with the use of essence. It doesn't mean that they couldn't be if they tried. It means that they are not adept at using it. But you'll also see certain characters
like NPCs. NPCs probably have less affinity.
That are above and beyond any player
on them, not us.
To use it, right? So the idea is that essence flows through this plane, it flows through this universe, and the divine races have a unique relationship with essence when it comes to wielding it, and oftentimes that's the interest of the darker forces in manipulating that relationship.
Very cool.
I like
Thank
my
you for
theory.
answering lore questions. That's
I'm
cool.
I'm hoping my theory is
Absolutely.
correct.
Well, guys, I got to tell you, this was a great AMA. I really enjoyed it. This
Yeah,
was a lot of
they
fun, and
asked
I
a lot
see
of
the
really,
comments in
really
the
good
community.
questions.
They
And Steven
enjoyed it as
handled it
well,
really
and people
well.
are saying best AMA ever.
One of
I
two.
thought
Oh, thank
it
God.
was-
You had a
I
50%
thought it
chance to
was
being
great. I thought
better.
you guys did a great job.
Dude, I
think
love Jamie.
asking some
Love
questions that the
Lattice.
community was
Nice.
really interested in.
Sunny.
And
All
both
great
questions
characters.
that, you know,
Definitely
got
go
some
check them
depth
out
in
if
for
you're wanting to
people who've
watch
been
more
following the
Ashes of
project for a
Creation
while,
content. Also,
and questions
Chibi,
like
who
our
rated
lore,
me
which gives
from
even
the Golden
newcomers
Feather
some
Tavern,
idea of the
her and
setting that they'll be
Vertec are
venturing into.
amazing.
So let me
I will
thank
be
you
on their
guys, for
show.
joining.
I'm
Vladis,
talking over Steven. So I will, yeah, I will be on Chibi's and the Golden Feather Tavern next week. I do know that they are going to be going live in like 2.5 hours. They have Rive Genesis, who is a big YouTube content creator in the scene. Definitely be sure to tune in for that if you have time. I'll be there. I'll be in the chat. I'll be talking shit, asking questions and whatnot. So, definitely go follow everybody. Go do your thing. And I hope you all enjoyed it of the breakdown, the major breakdown. I don't think there was anything really after this. I think they're just BSing and stuff. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. And then I guess I could try to raid some. I don't know who's streaming right now. Here we go. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for coming.